Hello traders, and welcome to Market Edge, ahead of the trade. I'm Owen Larson with Mission Winners, and this week we're seeing just how tricky a flat market can be beneath the surface. The indexes didn't move much, but the intraday action told a very different story. We saw reversals, news-driven shakeouts, and heavy sector rotation that made directional bias difficult to trust. So, in this episode, we're going to break it all down. We'll cover key ETF action, walk through a tactical playbook built specifically for chop and headline risk, and finish with a deep dive into the MAXLIST stocks to see where real leadership could be forming. Let's dive in.
See that clean and simple base right here? This is Direxion energy stocks. It's basing here. Oh, you could say that's pretty good. Here's the negative. Tremendous amount of overhead supply on the daily and the weekly. Tells you to be a little careful. If it pushes through here, just beware. There's a lot of sellers overhead. At Mission Winners, that's the kind of analysis we do. Helps us make more money. It also keeps us safer. So a lot of overhead on energy. Be careful. Let's move on. Dow Jones Internet, First Trust Dow Jones Internet has a decent base right here. And I'll draw this to help you. It doesn't need to be to the penny. Just get close. There you go. And there's some accumulation in there, but there's also some distribution. Tells you what's it need to do? Push through that line and push through with volume. Also note there's some overhead supply, something to be aware of. But it does say something. There is some improvement. It's not at the lows anymore. It's well off the lows on the weekly and the daily. It's showing some strength. And you like strength. We like strength in our stocks, right? I know you all do. We do. Continue onward. IBD 50 is basing tons of overhead supply here on the weekly. There's a base down here on the daily. As you can see, I'll draw it to help you. There it is. It's nothing fancy, folks. If you have to look for it, we're very pragmatic. I want you all to think about this. If you have to look for the base, it means it's probably not there. If you can't see it or I can't see it, chances are other people don't see it either. Therefore, they won't buy it. Let's stack the deck in our favor. So there's the IBD 50 basing here. It needs to push through there with some volume, but a lot of overhead supply as I cited. Let's move on. Gold's picking up a little bit here. Gold miners was good to us back in here. That was a rocket run. Basing right here. It's forming kind of a cup with a handle across here. I'll draw this to help you. Just around there, small shelf. There was a little bit of volume pickup on that bar, but overall, just basing here. A lot of overhead supply on the weekly too. Big reversal bar there. Be aware of that, okay? Just know that there's some sellers up there. They knocked it down pretty hard. So a little bit more of aggressive entry in gold miners. Let's continue onward. You can guess what the next one is. Gold. Gold, you see that base back there on the weekly? Simple base. That was a great run. We owned that, okay? But I'm not bragging. I'm just pointing out. Note the simple base. Everybody sees it, increases the potential that they'll buy it too. We like that. That's our edge. Now this is basing again, but notice it's a little bit gappy here. Gaps up, gaps down, gaps down, gaps up, gaps up. Whipping around here. High investor emotions in that chart. Be aware of that. I would like this to base a little bit longer and then take out these tops across here. Something to bear watching in the future. Cybersecurity is picking up. This is a nice long base right here, folks. You look at this in the ETF, you can say, boy, it's kind of grinding on up here. It's a nice base. Maybe I should look at some cybersecurity stocks. You can punch up HACK, H-A-C-K, top 10 groups, or top 10 stocks in that ETF, and you might find some leadership there. There you go. At Mission Winners, we systematize. You know, we got a limited amount of money and time. Let's use them both wisely, and I like that. Let's move on. Biotechnology, not a lot of power there. I'd be careful with that. Online retail picking up a little bit. That's not too bad. You can see right here on the daily. What's a big online retail stock? God, what's the name of that? Yeah, Amazon. There you go. Something to bear watching here. That's how you connect the dots. Again, you can look at an ETF that's moving, and then you can find some of the stocks in that ETF, okay, that represent that ETF. It's systematizing. Great way to make money. We like that. Let's move on here. Technology's picking up a little bit here. A lot of overhead supply. This is software technology, by the way, okay? You can always see the name right up there. I put that up there so it's a courtesy. So move on. Medicine's picking up a little bit. What's the common theme you're seeing here? Some picking, quote unquote, picking up a little bit. That's Pat Walker's simple terminology for it's getting a little better. How about that? That's what we like. Some strength there. Mid cap, picking up a little bit on the daily, but tons of overhead supply on the weekly, folks. Be careful with that. Overhead supply, that means there's people up there that own it. And when it goes up and near their price, what do? They say, thank heaven I'm near my price. I'm going to sell it. Overhead supply. So we don't like a load of overhead supply. You have to chew through it. Now look at this one, compare and contrast. There's no overhead supply here on aerospace and defense. Ticker symbol's ITA, lifting up here, and you can see there's some decent price volume action. It's a little bit extended in price, which is riskier, okay? But here's a great lesson for everybody. You can punch up ITA, top 10 holdings, and you might find some leadership stocks there. There you go. Admission winners, again, we systematize and it works. Home construction's pretty much lagging. I mean, look at the compare and contrast. Well, this is kind of near the highs, you know? Well, this is kind of near the lows. Yeah, be a little careful with that. Tons of overhead supply there. People that own it up higher, then when it gets near their price, they say, oh, it's back, back near my price, I'm selling that sucker. We don't, we want to see stocks that are just going up with not a lot of overhead supply. S&P 500 growth is basing, improving a little bit. That's nice to see. Not a lot of volume there, but some improvement in the growth area. Small caps picking up, but a lot of overhead supply here too. But some accumulation coming in on the daily. Some improvement in that sector. There we go. Real estate basing here, but again, ton of overhead supply. Also note, loose chart pattern here. You see this? Loose chart patterns indicate high investor emotions. And folks, you all know this. High investor emotions and sound decision making in any realm of life is the truth. So just something to be aware of. Let's move on here. Transportation's picking up a little bit, but again, a lot of overhead supply here. You can see it on the weekly and you can see it on the daily. There's a small base forming here, but again, there is some distribution in there. Some overhead supply had occurred. Be aware. Airlines picking up a little bit too. What's the common theme? I'll say it again. Some, quote unquote, some improvement. Things are getting a little bit better. There you go. Let's move on. Banking. You can always see the name right up here, by the way. Banking is picking up a little bit. All right. There's kind of a cup formation here. I'll draw this to help you. It's kind of going sideways. There you go. What does it need to do? Base here and then lift through that high with volume. Do note, though, there was some selling volume in here on the weekly, and it rallied up on decreasing volume. So be aware of that. Insurance picking up a little bit, kind of sloppy, no real clean entry there. They knocked the tar out of it on the way down here. Did have a nice reversal bar on weekly volume, though, didn't it? You see that bar right there? So there's some improvement. Maybe look at insurance. Not a super clean setup right now, okay? Just for what it's worth. Regional banking, lots of overhead supply. Notice this. Fell in heavy volume, rallying up on the weekly on steadily decreasing volume. Buying power is diminishing. Something to know. At Mission Winners, we do that analysis. I taught that at IBD meetups for years, and it works. Mid-cap is basing here. Some improvement. I like that. Lift it across this top. Watch this. There's another base forming right in there. Maybe it's going to form a handle, a cup with a handle. There was some distribution in here. However, note on the weekly, look at the volume pickup there. We like that. Let's move on. Oil services, boy, that's way down there. I know it's basing, but holy cow. What do you look at the weekly? And that's exactly why we haven't owned any oil service stocks for a long time. Why? Just leave it alone. Again, an investing maximum, Mission Winners and everywhere. Strength begets strength. Look for strength. So this might be the bottom. I'd rather say, oh, this is moving up. It looks like it's resting. It'll probably go again. There we go. Easier way to make money. Pharmaceuticals lagging, not a lot to do that. I think Lilly was part of this drop here, okay? You can see on the weekly, serious selling Be cautious. I'd avoid pharmaceuticals right now. QLD, nice base formation right here. As you can see, this is the NASDAQ 100. Right there. You can see those tops, folks. I'll take this line off for now. Clean that up a bit for you, just to help. There you go. So it's going sideways. What do we want to see? I'd love to see it form a little handle here and then take off. So you could say, oh, well, QLD could be a buy. Let's take that thought process a little bit further. That's the NASDAQ 100, the big boys, okay? It would be nice to see QLD lifting up, because if it is, some of the big MAXLIST stocks are going to be lifting up too. We like that. There we go. Let's move on here. Don't want to take too much of your time. QQQ, same situation. Retailing's picking up a little bit, but a lot kind of sloppy and gappy. Not real leadership here. Cloud computing picking up a little bit also. See the common phrase I've used? Picking up a little bit. There we go. Move on. Silver, sloppy, gappy. I mean, you don't like it when they go up and they gap right back down. Gap here, little chop here. Be careful with silver. Steel, picking up a little bit. No, not a slam dunk setup though. Quite a bit of overhead supply on the weekly. Let's go on here. SMH picking up, but still a lot of overhead supply. Okay, there was some serious damage on that way down. We avoided it. Semiconductor, same, by the way. SOXL, that's the Van Eck semiconductor ETF, and this is the Direxion semiconductor ETF, just so you know. And you can always see the name up here in the top, just as a reference to help you. Spiders, the S&P 500. I like this base that's formed here, and I'll show you something here. Let's go across these tops. There you go. It's just a simple flat line, folks. Consolidating, some accumulation in here, a little bit you can see on the weekly also. It would be nice if this could form a small handle here, and I'll show you what I mean. So we're tracking together. Form a small handle and then lift above that top with volume. That could be a good buy spot. There we go. Let's move on. Spiders, same situation as SSO. Spiders right there. SSO, same situation, going across those tops. Continue onward. Solar's picking up a little bit, but you can say, oh, that's picking up. Look at all the overhead supply. I mean, that's a ton, folks. It's going to take a lot of power for this thing to turn the corner. There's better places to put your money. Okay, just sharing that with you. Small cap, tons of overhead supply. Be careful. Oil, tons of overhead supply on the weekly. Be cautious with that. Aerospace and defense. Look at the compare and contrast. There's a lot of red there, Pat. Yeah. Oh, look at that. There's some green there, and it's near highs. Aerospace and defense. You could punch up XAR, find out their top 10 holdings. It's basing nicely on the weekly and the daily. Admission winners, this is why we do what we do. We systematize. Is there a quick way to see strength? And it's a quick way to see weakness. Areas to make money, areas to avoid. Biotechnology's lag and be very cautious. Home builders, not a lot of power there yet. Be a little cautious there. Materials picking up some. There's a base right here. And I know you see it, but I'll draw it to help you. And again, with these videos, what we try to do is educate what to look for. There's power in knowing that. A lot of people don't know it. It's important to understand it and apply it. There's a nice base forming right here. What's it need to do? Push through these tops with volume, okay? Also note, it's been rising on decreasing volume. Tells us the buying pressure is kind of dropping off a little bit. So what does that say? We need to push through this line, again, with volume. That's what we're after. We're about done here. Communications picking up a little bit, not too bad. Not our super clean entry. Energy has a base right here. That's an old line. I'll take it off, and we'll put a new line on. There you go. Simple base, simple flat base. Take out these tops. Now, you can say, well, that doesn't look too bad. But no, there was some distribution in here, right in here on the daily, and there was some selling here on the weekly. Look at that. Massive drop. I mean, look at this. Gap down on increasing volume dropping. Be careful with energy. Okay, if this lifts, just be careful because that's overhead supply. There are people that own it up here. When it gets back near their price, they're going to sell. That's overhead supply. Good to know. Financials picking up a little bit. That doesn't look too bad. I'll draw this line as a courtesy. And again, at Mission Winners, this is what we do. And it works. Just going sideways. Be great if this could form a little handle and take off. But it's a very important lesson. The financials are improving. That's a good thing. That's a very good event in relation to upcoming strength in the market. There we go. On XLF. Industrial's picking up a little bit also. Again, I'll circle back. Do you see what I'm saying? How many times have I said picking up a little bit? Improvement. That's what we like. Technology picked again. I won't use the phrase, but you can see. Okay, I will. It's picking up a little bit. You got to have fun here too, okay? Take it very seriously, but laughter's a good thing too. Picking up here, I like the space across here. If it could lift through there. So then what does this tell us? Oh, so I could buy XLK if it triggers. No, it tells us something else. Technology stocks are improving. There you go. You could look at leading technology stocks. Consumers aren't doing anything really. Leave that alone. Utilities going up. It's kind of a slow mover, but it is something positive. Utilities are interest rate sensitive. Tells us that the interest rate environment is fairly conducive to stocks. Healthcare lagging. I mean, look at this. There's no power there. Stay away from healthcare. That's simple. Consumer discretionary picking up a little bit. Kind of choppy though. A lot of overhead supply. But you can see it is picking up a little bit. And again, it just tells us the rally spreading out into certain areas. More areas. That's a plus. It's not like this market's a one-trick pony. There's several things that are working. Let's move on. Metals and mining, improving. Still some overhead on the weekly, though. Be aware of that. And we're about done. Oil services really lagging. Be careful there. Retailing picking up a little bit. But again, a lot of overhead supply there. Be careful with that. And we go on to software technology picking up a little bit. You can see, again, I'm not doing it to be obnoxious. I'm pointing out things are improving some here. That's good. I'm not showing a bunch of charts like, oh gosh, it's dropping, stay away. No, it's turned a corner. Got a higher low setup. Starting to pick up. And that's what we like.
So here's what we're seeing from the ETFs this week. A bit of improvement, yes, but nothing explosive. We're still seeing a lot of groups in basing patterns with heavy overhead supply. Technology is trying, semiconductors are stabilizing, and aerospace and defense continues to act well, but most areas are still mixed and uncertain. In an environment like this, it's not about finding every breakout. It's about staying selective, managing risk, and waiting for real confirmation. And that brings us to this week's tactical playbook. Traders are always looking for clarity, but this week we got chop. On the surface, the indexes were flat, but underneath, it was turbulence, sharp reversals, failed breakouts, and emotional price swings that gave back nearly every gain minutes later. This is the kind of environment that wears you down if you're not careful. So how do you handle it? You adjust the playbook. First, scale back. If you're typically managing 10 trades, cut that number in half. This is not the time to be aggressive. Second, let the moving averages guide your action, especially the 8 and 21 EMAs. If the market holds above them, that's constructive. But lose the 8 and you've got short-term weakness. Lose the 21st and things start to break down. Let those lines act as signposts. Third, ditch the bias. That's crucial. We are chart readers. We let price action dictate our actions. And we respond, we don't react. Look at a chart like Google. It had reclaimed the 50-day, held above it for 3 sessions, and was trying to bounce. Sure, the 50 was still falling, but with so much damage across the board, a bounce off that level was worth watching. Then, completely out of nowhere, Apple drops news about declining traditional search traffic, and that chart gets crushed. That's this market. News-driven, unpredictable, heavy headline risk. And in this kind of tape, discipline becomes your edge. Not prediction, not opinions. So here's the takeaway. Keep your risk light. Stay flexible. And when clean setups start to appear again, you'll be ready to act with clarity and confidence. Now that we've talked about how to stay grounded in a noisy market, the question becomes, where is the money going to show up when conditions improve? That's where the Max list comes in. This is our institutional leadership watch list. If strength is coming back into the market, we're likely to see it appear here first. Let's take a look at the big names and see which ones are starting to set up and which ones still need time.
And here we go to the Max list. First stock, this is in alphabetical order, is Apple. This is the 50-day moving average line. It's still below the falling 50-day. It's not showing a lot of power yet, folks. Be careful with that. All right, there's better fish to fry. What does it need to do? Well, it needs to push through the 21 EMA. It needs to push through the 50-day with volume and a good market. And until that happens, be a little cautious. Let's move on. Here we go. Amazon, now this has a nicer base. I mean, look at the compare and contrast. Kind of sloppy here. There's Amazon, just basing, and I'm going to take this line out and just show you to help. There it is. Just simple basis. This is the daily chart. That green line is the 50-day moving average line, just to frame it up. But again, you can see it started to lift up. Volume's decent. What are we looking for? Push through these tops with volume. That could be a potential buy on Amazon. There we go. Let's move on. This is a derivative of Amazon, the Direxion, okay? And it's a way to get involved in Amazon at a lower price. I mean, Amazon's trading right here around 190 bucks a share. AMZU's trading around 30 bucks. There you go. What does it need to do? Push through these tops right here. I'll draw the line to help you. Push through those tops with volume. Now, fair warning, tons of overhead supply on the weekly and on the daily. Be careful with that, just for what it's worth. But again, we're looking for opportunities to make money. That's why we do this. I don't do this, and I know you don't do it just to look at charts. We're doing this to find opportunities to make money, and I like that. So here we go. Going through here, started to lift up, a little choppy here, okay? And you can see on the weekly, it ran up and faded off on a slight pickup in volume. You've got a tail bar here, and here, and here, and here, where it runs up and fades, runs up and fades. Needs to push through these tops with volume. Not the best setup, just pointing it out as a courtesy because it is a Max list stock. BIDU, same situation, kind of a sister stock to BABA, ran up and faded off here. Needs to, and we're going to clean this up a bit. Watch this. You see the high on this bar and the high on this bar? This is a great tactic we use in Mission Winners. Clean out the chart. There you go. It's kind of a cup with a handle. What does it need to do? Take out these tops with volume. But you can see the simple base. Am I saying it's going to happen? We don't know the future, but I will tell you this, we're always ready. This is not the best setup also if you combine with price and volume, which we do at Mission Winners. It was going up, but it didn't really go up on a lot of volume. And then they took it down 3 days ago on a pickup in selling volume. You can see the red bar right there. I'll do this to help you too. Just make it a hair bigger so you can see the volume. There you go. Let's move on. Goldman Sachs. Oh, now look at this nice base right here on Goldman Sachs. It's just been going back and forth, working through here. What do we want to see? Push through these tops with volume. Already have a price alert set. You see a little green hash mark? Again, we want to see good price action backed by good buying volume. Volume is very important. Again, it tells us people see what we see and they're acting on it. They're buying. So there's Goldman Sachs, big Max list stock. Continue onwards. Google, big Max list stock. How's that look to you? Let's do a compare and contrast. Well, that one's kind of going sideways. Well, that kind of got spanked here a little bit on increasing volume. Till it takes out this line, it's really nothing to do with it, okay? It's kind of lots of overhead supply. I'd just be cautious with Google right now. It won't be on my front page. MasterCard's picking up a little bit. Little choppy here, though, okay? Needs to maybe form a handle and then take out the highs of this bar. And again, watch this. I'm doing this real time, folks. I didn't rehearse this. There you go. The high on this bar is fairly close to the high on this bar. Perhaps it's going to, and I'll clean this out and take it out so you can just see this. Could it form? I'm not saying it will, but could it form a little handle here and then push through? Yes. And what would that be? That would be a cup with a handle. Please note, it fell on heavy volume and it lifted up on decreasing volume. So there's not a lot of buying power on the way up here. Just things that we look at. At Mission Winners, we try to examine the charts to make sound investing decisions and make more money and be safer too. Meta, clean base right here, gapped up, ran up, and reversed down on a slight pickup in volume. It was met with selling, okay? Needs to base here a little longer and then lift off with volume. That could be a reliable buy signal. So, but again, right here, gapped up and reversed down on picking up volume, was met with selling, all right? There's another valuable lesson for everybody. Be careful buying gap ups. Be careful chasing price. Right in here. That'll help you. Microsoft, big gap up there. Needs some base out a little bit longer. Could be an opportunity. Not much at this point in time. Netflix, you see this low-level base right here on the daily and the low-level base here on the weekly? That's how money is made. This was on the key list for buy here, and then follow through. We bought this, a little over $1,000, and here is at $11.40. Simple base, though, right there. At Mission Winners, that's what we do. This is what we find. We find these. You know what's really great? Successful people get their work done through other people. Our VIPs, they've hired me. They've hired me to find money for them. That's my job. That's what I do. Look for opportunities, look for money. So they hired me. There we go. NVDA lifted across. See this long base right here? Lifted across here with a volume pickup. It's a start. We'll watch and see what happens here. We're in it. Added. Let's watch and see what happens. By the way, there's another line right up here. And I'm going to draw this to help you as a courtesy. There. The highs on this bar are fairly close to the highs on this bar. What would be nice? I would love it if it would push through that top, this line right here, with more volume. What will we do? Two things. It could either be a new buy or it could be an add-on. All right? Rules of proper pyramiding. If you add on, again, always buy less shares than what you own. You never want to pull up your average price too high. If your first buy is 50 shares, don't make your next buy 50 shares. You're pulling your average price out. Make it less. Always make it less. Great risk control tactic. There you go. There's NVDA. Similar situation like NVIDIA. There's Tesla. We talk about simple bases. There it is. We talked about this numerous times with our VIPs. Just push across these tops. And it did with a volume pickup. See this? And what did we do? We bought it. There we go. We bought it a couple of times. That's it. Vanilla. Nothing fancy. Move on here. TSLA. This one triggered also. This is the lower priced ETF or direct that you could buy at a lower price. You can see it's the same base though. Lifted up, backed off a little bit. Be nice to take out the highs of this bar and this bar, and I'll draw this to help you. Again, I love teaching this stuff. That's close enough right there. Take out those tops, take out that top line with volume. Could be a buy, but in all instances also a good market. Good market too. The M and Mission Winners, markets come first. That's what we do. That's what we do to help people.
That wraps up this week's episode. A big thank you to Pat Walker for the ETF and MAXLIST breakdown, and to all of you for tuning in. If you found this helpful, make sure to subscribe and check out missionwinners.com and stay sharp out there. Master your strategy, trust the process, and maintain your edge.
I am here in the middle of nowhere. There is no there.